Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 1:30, so in the interest of time, we will get this meeting under order. I will call this to order. City Clerk, could I please have a roll call?
Thank you. Members of the committee, Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Parker. Here. Acting Mayor Schmidt-Rempel.
Present.
All members are in attendance and quorum is established. Also in attendance are other members of council, Councillor Crowson and Councillor Palladino.
Thank you very much. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. First up, we have adoption of the agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Campbell that the agenda of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting on October 13th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Councillor Campbell.
Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda? Nothing? No, then I call for the vote.
Vote's been called. All in favor? Thank you very much. I am moving on to the consent agenda from Deputy Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting held on September 8th, 2022 be approved and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Deputy Mayor Parker.
Madam Chair, I just called a question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Seeing no opposed, we will carry on. We have presentation 5.1, Social Health Equity Network of Lethbridge and Area, Shunla Poverty Report 2022. Sharon Yannicki.
Jackie Zalasek from the United Way, and I'm representing the Social Health Equity Network of Lethbridge and Area. And we'd like to acknowledge the funding support that we received for completing this report from the City of Lethbridge and the Government of Canada. The report was completed for us by Help Seeker. So in examining this report, you'll see that the focus is on child and youth and family poverty. And so this is the first report in Lethbridge to address this focus. And a previous report on poverty was completed by Vibrant Lethbridge in 2015. So it's been some time since the last report on poverty. Next slide. So we'll see here that while there has been some reduction in poverty over a period of 20 years, it's still a very significant issue in our community, particularly among children. And so that we're aware that poverty has some very negative effects on the health and well-being of children. It affects their entire future, their health, their ability to learn, their ability to complete school, and their future employment, but it also increases many risks for them across the scope of their lifetime. So this makes it very important for our community as well. This report focused on data from the census report of 2016, so we realized that some of the data included is older, but we were able to access 2019 data on the family low-income measure after tax from the family file. And so some of the data I'm going to talk about is a little bit more recent. So in 2019, 15% of children and youth from 0 to 17 years of age in Lethbridge were living in low income, so 15%. But compare that to 47% of children living in low-income families and 42% of children in First Nations communities, in First Nations families living in Lethbridge. So there are some children who are very disproportionately affected by child poverty in our community. And it's important to note that data from the 2021 census is now available, and so a follow-up report on poverty is needed to address and describe what's happened since the pandemic. Also wanted to note that in Lethbridge we have higher rates of lone parent families in comparison to many other communities. Next slide. So in looking at child poverty's many impacts on well-being, what's the evidence on poverty? Well, we know that poverty has the highest impact. It's the most influential determinant of health, and the costs of poverty are very significant. So doing nothing about poverty still costs a lot of money because of the cascade of effects that happen across the lifetime of children, and the impacts at the community level as well. So by addressing child poverty, we can prevent that cascade of negative impacts across the life course, and we can also reduce the cycle of poverty across generations. At a community level, it's also important to note that we have that children living in poverty are exposed to higher rates of child trauma, adverse childhood experiences, chronic disease, higher rates of addiction over their life course, and higher rates of criminal involvement, or it impacts crime rates in our community as well. So eliminating poverty is less expensive than ignoring it. This is a really important point for social policy. And all of our children in our community should have opportunities for health and well-being. Next slide. Jackie.
Shenla and the United Way joined the Alberta Living Wage Network in 2021. The living wage for Lethbridge in 2021 was $19 an hour, and that was last calculated in 2015. We were surprised to find that Lethbridge had the highest costs for food and electricity costs among cities in Alberta. We are actually in the midst of calculating new data, and we expect that the Alberta living wage for Lethbridge will significantly increase.
Ms. Celeste, we only have 5 minutes for a presentation, so I will have to ask you to please start wrapping it up.
Currently, the City of Lethbridge lacks a comprehensive strategy to address poverty, and Shenla and the United Way are focusing on a collective impact, ending poverty, especially child poverty, and a just recovery for the pandemic. We will be encouraging broad community participation in addressing poverty in Lethbridge and Alberta, and this would include a variety of stakeholders collaborating. Sharon?
Next slide. Our recommendations involve engaging people with lived experience in poverty to share their stories and participate in action on poverty. And the next slide. And here are the key recommendations that we have selected. The report addresses recommendations that would involve many agencies, groups, and businesses in addressing poverty. Here we've selected just the focus of that we would like to address to City Council and to this committee. Our top 2 recommendations are that we would like to lead a process of engagement and plan to develop a plan to end poverty in Lethbridge. And for this, we would like to ask the city to commit to support us in this work. We are asking City Council to implement a low-income bus pass, and this is a really key priority in our community. And if you have questions, you can, Jackie can further comment on some work they've recently done in United Way that supports this issue. And so the last slide is just to note that we have developed recommendations from reports across the country, and these are evidence-based recommendations associated with good outcomes.
Thank you both very much for your presentation. All members of council do have copies of the presentation as well as copies of the report, which we have reviewed. At this time, I will ask if there are any members of the community who would like to speak to this item on the agenda. I'll ask again if there are any members of the gallery who would like to speak to this item on the agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll turn questions over to members of the committee. Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation. I really like the idea of the low-income bus pass. I think it's a long time coming. And I think, of course, it's going to probably have to be a budget initiative. So I'm going to direct my questions to the city manager, and then, of course, Mr. Matthews, if we did do something like this, what could be the cost implications? Because obviously there'd have to be a resolution brought forward on something. Do you have any, or maybe someone could help you with that? Thank you.
Sorry,
Oh, that's okay.
to the chair, to Councillor Parker. Basically, we need to come back to a little bit more work on this to be able to answer that fully, that question. What Mr. Fox was reminding me of, there is one initiative coming from council in regards to fares for seniors and youth. So that is coming forward within the budget process.
Perfect, and thank you. And Mr. Fox, obviously you'll need some kind of direction from council to do something like that. Would you be able to come back with the numbers prior to budget, or would it just have to be at the budget time? Because obviously you'll have to do some due diligence on this.
Through the chair, the one budget initiative that's coming forward, I believe it's from Councillor Kraus, and is we provided a few options in there. One was adding it to the fee assistance program, and then the other one was to allow free bus passes for seniors and youth. That's under 18. And that initiative, I believe, was around 450,000. Please don't quote me on that, but it is in the initiative book.
Perfect, and I thank Councillor Croson for doing that. And so I just want to say thank you, ladies. I think that's a great initiative, and I think the community, from a political perspective, I think the community would buy into that as well. So I think from what I hear out there in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Parker. Does anyone else have any questions at all? Councillor Middleton Hope.
Yes, just one, and it's directed at the presenters. In the recommendations slide, it indicates that you're advocating for implementing a living wage for all City of Lethbridge employees and contractors. Are you talking about our staff?
Yes. So one of the strategies is to address working poverty. And so when a municipality applies this, it would apply to all of your employees and as well as anyone who contracts with the city. So it would include your janitorial services and all sorts of services. But it is an important strategy for lifting people out of poverty, particularly when we know minimum wage is not meeting the cost of living in Lethbridge for either a single person or a person in a family. So that's.
Thank you.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you. Following up on the question that Councillor Middleton Hope just had, something similar is being done in Calgary through the benefit-driven procurement, which I know has been discussed by committee before, but I know in Calgary they use it for a few things, and they do have into their procurement policy that they will not do contracts with companies that do not pay living wage. Is it something like that that you're talking about, using whatever mechanisms the community, the city has to ensure that if we have it as a value, we make sure we apply it to procurement, et cetera?
Yes, that's really correct. And so members of Shenla have adopted a living wage. Several of our organizations in the last year have implemented a living wage, including the United Way. And so if this is adopted by the city, it has a great impact on the city.
And this is just an aside, it's very much like council should be considering benefit-driven procurement. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you allowing us to ask questions. even for those of us who aren't members, but kind of interested parties, I guess. I was part of Vibrant Lethbridge for many years. It's been sort of discontinued, put on hold. A lot of this work was done by Vibrant Lethbridge, researching the policies for living wage for our employees and contractors, et cetera. As well as for many years, I think back to 2008, 2011, 2014, I brought forward budget initiatives for low-income bus passes. So that information I think is available. And so my question through you, Madam Chair, is to Director Fox, perhaps. Do you have access to all that information that Vibrant Lethbridge, it was Lethbridge's Poverty Reduction Committee, it was a subcommittee of Community and Social Development. All that information should be held somewhere. I'm hoping you have access. Have you been able to see any of that information that Vibrant Lethbridge was working on?
Through the chair, I haven't read it all. I was aware of a Vibrant Lethbridge at one time. I believe it was before I was here. It was mentioned in, I believe, some reports that CSD brought forward when I first got here, but I have not reviewed the documents. I'm sure I could look them up, though.
Thank you. It's just in response to Councillor Parker. This question around a budget initiative. I did a lot of that work back in the day, so that the numbers may have to be a bit refreshed, but it should be a good starting point. So I'm hopeful that that information is still available and can be gone through. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just can you just give me a little history of who Shenla is, how it started, where it became, who's involved, the organizations, and how you get your funding and all that sort of thing? Just a little background.
So Shenla formed immediately following the closing of Vibrant Lethbridge, and so many of the member organizations that were participating in Vibrant Lethbridge helped to form the Social Health Equity Network. We chose to have a little bit broader focus because of wanting to focus on community health and well-being as part of issues around poverty and inequality in our community. And so I was part of that, Vibrant Lethbridge and the previous reports that were done, and I know many of our members are as well. We have members including many registered charities. We're trying to link to action with the school boards on this poverty report. We've had previous links with Lethbridge Housing has been participating, Aboriginal Housing used to participate, and we're hoping to reactivate some other members. We have a member of a business who is a champion for this work, and he's present today, active member of our group, Alan. And so it's just a variety of community members as well as organizational members.
And what kind of funding do you get, or do you rely on? Where is this sort of a request thing, or how does that? It's all asking for?
Yeah, so currently we are a network organization, but we have developed a relationship with United Way, and they're willing to be our fiscal agent in working on trying to if we wanted to apply for grants, for example. And we have worked with the city because they have been our backbone organization in trying to address collective impact on issues like poverty.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You. Do we have any other questions from members of council? I do have a few questions for the presenters. The report states that low-income rates have been decreasing in Lethbridge and surrounding communities year over year. How does this decrease compare to other areas of similar size and demographic?
A very good question. The report looked at a 20-year period, and so we'd seen a little over 7% decline. We note that this is largely impacted through federal and provincial policies, and the child tax benefit has had a big impact on families with like two-parent families with 2 children is the one we have more information on. And that has significantly dropped in comparison to other family types. I can't give you specific information, but there's many details in the report on that.
Okay. Will this report, and will you be out presenting to the surrounding communities that are included in this report with similar asks?
We will certainly be reaching out to other communities because poverty is particularly an issue in several of our rural communities. And we have several representatives from the town of Fort Macleod in our Shenla group, but we will be reaching out to some of the other communities to discuss these issues. Thank you. And our members of, our elected members in Parliament and at the provincial level.
And that was going to be my next question, so thank you for that. You've made an interesting point on page 33 of the report where you state that approximately 60% of the providers in Lethbridge with available information operate Monday to Friday, with 15% of the services open on weekends. Only 22% of services with information available are accessible outside of regular weekday business hours. So that is a limit to access to the services. So my question is, which of those providers out of your research would be most imperative to see extended business hours? Like, who do we need to start encouraging to have their doors open for longer business hours to be serving those in our community?
I'm not sure I could answer that, but I can work with Help Seeker to address that a little bit with a bit more detail. But I don't have that information at hand.
Okay. And then on page 50, you talk about one of the recommendations, pilot testing innovative poverty prevention projects. Do you have specific examples of those?
There are a number of initiatives in both Edmonton and Calgary, and some of them have included working with business partners. We are, both Jackie and I are members of the Alberta Poverty Reduction Network, and so we could bring forward specific suggestions that have been effective in either Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer. We'd be happy to return with more detail on that.
Yeah, I think if you could share some of that, it would be helpful for people to understand what some of those ideas might be. Does anybody else have any questions at all? All right, seeing none, thank you both very much for your time and for your presentation. I have a motion here from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receive the 2022 Lethbridge Child and Family Poverty Report from the Social Health Equity Network of Lethbridge and area as information. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation and certainly making those on council alive to the challenges that you are you've identified and you represent. And Madam Chair, if there's any additional comments or concerns or questions from the members of the committee, perhaps now would be an opportunity for them to ask. All right, we can transition into debate. Any debate? Okay, then I'll call the question, Madam Chair.
Question's been called. All in favor? That is passed. Thank you very much. Item 5.2, chickens in residential backyards. Mr. Gilles Leclerc, if you would like to come forward.
Thank you very much, councillors, for hearing me today. To begin, I have a petition here of 500 names of Lethbridge, City of Lethbridge residents. So if you want to hear the preamble on that, if we have time, we can go over that. While this issue came up in 2018, a lot has changed in 4 years. I'd just like to state that caring for chickens is a much simpler thing than most people imagine. Thank you. More than just chickens is an apt title for this because really there is a whole lot more involved in this situation when you consider the benefits to psychological and physical health of the community. Slide. There are three big reasons I believe that chickens should be brought up. These are my personal favorite reasons why we should have them. Slide. We can define food resilience as a community's ability to sustainably grow its own food in the face of drought or chaotic weather patterns or interruption from global instability or corporate manipulation or oil price shocks or pandemics or any number of imaginable scenarios. Alberta has the highest food insecurity in Canada. 1 out of 5 households, or 20%, are food insecure. They state that food insecure people are much more likely than others to suffer from chronic physical and mental health problems. This was a local grocery store days into the pandemic. We saw how supplies were basically drained. So there were shortages, supply chain issues. We can avoid this. Now, of course, when it comes to food security, chickens are obviously not the entire solution, but they too fit an important piece of the puzzle in helping Lethbridge become more sustainable. Of course, the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, drawn up in 2010 by over 30 residents and council members and a lot of community input, simply stated that Lethbridge should be a leader in environmental stewardship. I say let's try and walk the talk. Now, there is currently on the table a plan to recycle green waste at a cost of, as I understand, $10 million startup cost, $3.5 million per year. Maybe there's something we could do to reduce that cost. I think chickens are a good idea that would help this. It might seem rather radical, but let's think of a couple of reasons why this would be useful. First, chickens are omnivores. They eat anything. They eat weeds, seeds, bugs, slugs, grasshoppers. They're a really good form of pest control. But the more important part is that chickens do love kitchen scraps. It's impossible to have chickens without producing compost. Converting waste to compost is one of the things they do best. In fact, if one household per city block had 4 chickens, they could reduce that burden by 10 pounds per week, 500 pounds per year. If you do the math, there'd be pretty substantial savings there in fuel alone. Some of us older folks may have stories from our youth when our parents might have been looking at chickens. I remember doing something similar with the heat lamps in the garage. Nobody can deny the utility of chickens. And the fact is, we need our youth to learn a few life skills towards making them more sustainable. And judging by the popularity of petting zoos, it will certainly get them excited about animal care. So we can go a long way towards letting this process unfold. So creating a food supply, a steady, resilient food supply, is nothing more than taking an old idea and putting it in modern form. By using chickens to enable them to do the things they do best, we get a better handle on our green waste, which doesn't have to involve money or fuel or heavy equipment. Slide. As far as youth education goes, this type of learning can happen in not only the home environment, but in schools, neighborhood organizations, churches, nonprofit associations could be involved to teach whatever skills are needed to ensure the next generation will have practical and usable living skills. In closing, I'd just like to wrap up with, I dream of a world where chickens can cross the road without having their motives questioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leclerc. Do we have any members from the community in the audience today who would like to speak to this? And I'll ask again, do we have any members of the gallery who would like to come and speak to this? All right, seeing none, I will turn this over to questions from the committee. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions for you. I guess as much as anything else, they're statements as well. So we're now aware of avian flu and the challenge that that poses. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is concerned about the spread of H5N1, which is most common among poultry, as you're probably well aware. Although transmission to humans and other species is low, it does occur. Now, the CFIA does not do testing, monitoring, licensing, or production management of backyard coops. How might you respond to that concern?
Well, I would say certainly when a farmer loses 5,000, 10,000 chickens, that's a tragedy. But when a urban backyard chicken keeper loses 4 chickens, I wouldn't really say that's tragic. Songbirds are not affected by...
I didn't use the term tragic.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Songbirds are not affected. Waterfowl, very rarely. Hunters got to keep an eye on that one. They are certainly concerned, but the numbers haven't been so high as to cause a great deal of concern amongst environmental people. So I would say that there's a risk in everything, for sure. But I don't think that having backyard chickens would make that risk any worse or less.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about here, and I don't disagree with you on that point. What I am concerned about, however, is the fact that there is no CFIA involvement. You can raise chickens, you can sell eggs to your neighbors, you can give eggs to your neighbors. At the end of the day, there's no control over that. Currently, there is. If I go to London Road Market and I want to buy 2 dozen eggs, which I think are on sale for $3.89 today, if I want to buy them, I've got an assurance that they've been inspected. How do we get around that? By allowing people to have chickens in their backyards and raise them for producing eggs, as an example?
Well, it would certainly be for the owner's personal consumption. Other cities that have implemented the bylaw have stated strictly no sales of eggs should happen on this. So I guess like a lot of other things, it's the independent owner of those chickens takes whatever risk is involved, and it's up to them to become educated. And also on the bylaws, some of those bylaws in some cities, Edmonton, for example, states that a person who wants to have chickens should undergo some training, which would be about 3 or 4 hours or so.
Not create a black market of backyard chicken eggs.
No.
How might you respond to questions from the public in regards to smell, noise associated with backyard operations that create some significant issues perhaps for neighbors? How would you respond to that? Let's plop a chicken coop in the middle of any neighborhood in Lethbridge, and how do we as a city respond to the concerns that neighbors may voice in regards to the activities in your backyard?
You know, if a person did have chickens in their backyard, and I think the noise that might happen, for one, from chickens is pretty minimal, not a whole lot worse than crows or dogs barking. So I think a person would probably go through the usual channels and phone the city and say, you know what, those chickens are making too much noises. But I don't think that's going to happen a whole lot. And the smell is also very minimal. If you're only keeping 4 chickens and you give them enough space, there's a lot of air circulation happening. Smell is not really the issue that we think it is.
Okay. I have two other pieces here. What about attracting predators? I can tell you in my neighborhood that coyotes are a significant issue. Certainly chickens would attract predators, so how do we manage that?
There's a few things you could do. First of all, you could build your the fence around your chicken run deeper into the ground, 12 inches down into the ground, so predators cannot dig through there. If you use something a little bit a heavier metal gauge and your standard chicken wire, predators can't get through that. And I think coyotes coming into the city, well, they got to be pretty rare. If you live perhaps close to the river, there's probably a better chance you might see some coyotes through your backyard.
We actually see coyotes quite regularly, yeah.
Oh, okay. So how do people do with their cats and dogs with that?
Keep them inside.
Okay.
Well, that's what
Keep
we
your
want. We want
in your
chickens
chicken
inside
coop.
now.
In your chicken
I'm just
coop.
kidding. All right, the last comment that I have is in regards to regulating this whole process. We're currently very strapped, and I see our head of regulatory services sitting here in the audience. We're currently very strapped with managing regulatory services. this would add an additional burden to regulatory services. Do you envision some form of compensation to the city in regards to licensing these backyard coops and so forth?
I can go probably a long way aside from that by taking a different angle. I think if we were to get other community agencies involved, it would have a multiplier effect by getting more people involved, more people interested, perhaps getting schools involved in their learning and in the keeping. Community gardens are in place already. A great place to have chickens would be right beside a community garden. As far as the regulation goes, we could take a hands-off, laissez-faire kind of approach and just say leave it up to community organizations. I think to have communities involved in their own food production is a very positive direction to go. And if we do that with chickens, I think it would be a great idea. We would certainly be leaders that way.
Thank you for your comments.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Just, you talked about public opinion, and you've got it in here. Surveys done, it wasn't overwhelmingly in favor of backyard chickens. I just wanted, and you talked about times have changed. How do you foresee public opinion going forward in the new post-COVID era? How do we get everyone on board?
Well, I don't know if we'll ever have everybody on board, as you know. That's probably not likely, but I think if we take an approach of food resilience and the importance of food resilience, the importance of getting people involved more with food production, and a few maybe community organizations being involved in this, I think it would really get a lot of momentum that way.
Do you think it's more informing public a little bit more? Or what do you have to do to? I mean, I guess throwing it around. Why haven't they been accepted in the past?
How have they not been accepted?
How having chickens in the backyard? I mean, public opinion saying no, we don't want to go forward with that.
Right.
Just your take on it.
Right. Well, what we have from 2018 is quite a bit different than what we would have today, and I think people's awareness has changed quite a bit. And I think how we do the survey is also very important. I did look at that last survey and to ask people if they would have chickens themselves as part of the survey. I wouldn't even have that as a question at all. I mean, if you're going to talk about legalization of, say, cats or dogs, if they were illegal, well, you don't ask people, would you have a cat or a dog? You ask people, would you be in favor of other people having cats or dogs? So the same would, I think, go for chickens. And yeah, a lot of public education. And I think once people would see more examples of chickens in the backyards, they'd start to feel more comfortable with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fox, or even maybe Mr. Henley, can answer this question that I have. We talked about some time ago at another council meeting about a responsible animal ownership bylaw. Would we be looking at including chickens, goats, pigs, other farmyard stock in that particular bylaw when it comes up for review?
Through the chair, as we have looked into the animal bylaw, when we bring it forward to committee, there will be some questions surrounding farm animals and other types of animals and whether or not council believes they should be part of the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other, Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Leclerc and I go back many, many years. My time across the street here over at the county. So these questions are for you. I have two of them. Your 2012 survey indicated that 72% of those surveyed said no to being allowed to have chickens, and the 2019 survey had 58% said no. So you appear to be moving in the right direction. So maybe to help answer Councillor Campbell's questions. But why don't we see a 2022 survey?
Yeah, I can start one if you like.
It just might put you over that 50% mark.
Right.
And in one of the surveys, you say that 80% of the population would not raise hens even if approved. And 29% of the population said no to the city spending money on this. So are we being asked to satisfy, in the first instance, 15% of the population we're being asked to satisfy those, because 85% of them wouldn't raise chickens if they had a chance. And I guess my last question is, you indicated you wanted to do a pilot project at one time. Is that still on the books? On your books, I guess?
I could take a moment here and read what was on the petition. That might be relevant. All right. Many other cities have successfully implemented urban hen-keeping programs that support food sustainability, enrich communities, and foster educational, recreational, and supportive opportunities for residents. We, the undersigned residents of the City of Lethbridge, request that City Council provide bylaw exemption to permit residents to keep urban hens under specific condition. An exemption permit would require an accredited chicken keeping course and strict adherence to rules limiting the number, housing, and treatment of hens. No roosters would be permitted. So that's what 500 people signed on for.
Okay, and that's fine. It's just still 85% of the population in 2019 said they would not raise hens. So
But
that means
that is not the issue, though, whether people raise hens or not. If I say, let's make, I don't know, electric bikes available, and people say, yeah, but they wouldn't ask, would you ride an electric bike? As that's not the question you would ask. Just the same thing with chickens. I expect as well, over 90% of people will not be raising chickens. But that's different than whether those 90% say, hey, it's a good idea. If people want to raise chickens, they should have the free right to raise chickens. It's their food. 5 grams of protein with every egg.
I like eggs. So.
Yeah, me too.
You said to Councillor Middleton Hope that they're not noisy?
They're not noisy.
Not noisy? No, because that was a lot of the complaints I used to get at the county.
If you get 100 chickens, that's noisy. You get 4 chickens.
If you get them 2 feet from your property line between your garage and your back gate, which there will be that in the city of Lethbridge, you're going to cause a problem to the dog next door at least, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Leclerc, can you please make sure that you leave a copy of the petition behind for us,
Okay.
if you don't mind? Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of council who have any questions with regards to this item? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, if I can, to I'm not sure which staff are there. It might be to regulatory services or just to whatever city administration is available. Have we done any research into how other jurisdictions have mitigated some of the concerns raised? I think Councillor Palladino was talking about noise, if you're right next door. Have other communities maybe implemented a process whereby if you want to apply for a permit, you've got to get agreement from your neighbors on either side, et cetera, to come forward and say that they have no issues with it? I'll be honest, at a previous house I lived at, we had neighbors that had chickens. They even actually had a rooster, which was quite interesting and not half as noisy as you would expect. It was actually kind of cool to occasionally hear it go off. But it never caused me any issues. So I'm wondering, is there a process that other communities have undertaken where they said, yeah, if your neighbors are okay with it, we can permit you? Do we know any of that information?
Through the chair, I believe Regulatory Services has done some digging into what other communities have done, and we can bring that forward with the information we bring the animal bylaw forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carlson. Do we have any other questions at all? All right, seeing none, I have a motion here from Councillor Campbell. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receive the report on chickens in residential backyards as information. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the information and ongoing discussion. I don't know if there's anybody else wants to have anything asked or say anything more about this. We're receiving this as information. If there's nothing else, then I'll call for the vote.
Seeing nothing else, the question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Middleton Hope? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5.3, drones and flying safety regulations.
I'm not sure if she's here. She thought she probably wouldn't be here, and so that's why she sent the written submission.
Okay. Do we have Marina Krasowski in our audience? All right. She did indicate that she may not be able to attend, so she did send some correspondence, which was mailed out to members of the committee to take a look at. Are there any other members from the community in the audience who would like to speak to this issue? And I'll ask again, are there any other members in the community who would like to speak to this issue? All right, seeing none, we'll turn this over to members of the committee. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Without the benefit of the presentation, I would like to suggest that I think there's more research and on the regulations in particular that need to be done. I would be much more comfortable with evaluating whether we regulate drones, whether we initiate a bylaw or not, if we had more information that provided us with some insights into what the challenges might be. We have a number of drones that are operating in the city for a variety of different reasons. There are some regulations that are managing them, but at the end of the day, I certainly do not feel comfortable enough without additional research and certainly having a look at the regulations. So.
And that is part of the resolution that we will be directing administration to report on drones and possible regulatory options.
Why I would support it.
Do we have any other questions from council with regards to this issue? All right, seeing none, I have a motion here from Deputy Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receive the report on drones as information, and further that administration provide a report on drones and possible regulatory options to the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee by February 9th, 2023. Deputy Mayor Parker.
Thank you very much. And first of all, is there any questions in regards to the resolution? Otherwise, obviously this is relatively new technology. Well, it's new in that more and more people have the opportunity to use drones for both business, leisure, even for sport. So I think it's important that it's incumbent that we do our due diligence, find out what best practices and what other communities are, and then hopefully we'll have a report back by no later than February of next year. I think I thanked the lady for the presentation. I did have an opportunity to read it. Thank you, Mr. Sarsfield, for providing it to us as well. But I think that gives ample opportunity for administration to come back with some recommendations. So I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? That passes. Thank you very much. And we are now on to item 6.1. Response to removal of encampment strategy. This was a submission. Okay, and we've got a sign-up sheet.
We do. So Council Cowell just stuck his hand up, so I'm not sure why.
We're not quite there yet, sir, so just hang on one second. Thank you very much. So we have a resolution from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the encampment strategy report and attachments for information, and further that the report be forwarded to the 2023-2026 operating budget deliberations. At this time, we will call and see if there are any members of the audience who would like to come up and speak to this resolution. If you'd like to come up, please state your name, and we also need you to please sign up on the sign-in sheet right beside there.
Hello, my name is Ron. I want to thank you guys for letting me come in and speak about this. We appreciate it. You'll find me a little rough around the edges. I'm not as finesse as you people and, you know, as educated, but I'm here to speak about this issue. I work in retail in the business community. I protect 5 ladies in a store that have had to deal with this issue. And the community, the surrounding communities in the Civic Center, the London Road communities have had to deal with this issue. So I'm here to talk about it, and they are here to appeal to you for your help dealing with this issue. Before I start telling you a little bit about it, we have to remember that we want to help all people involved. We want to help the business community. We want to help the communities and the people that are living in the homes, but we also want to help the people that are involved in the tents. They also need help as well. The reason why I got started in this is because I said that I was in a retail position. These people were coming down into the stores and they were robbing the stores blindly. And these young little girls that were working there, 18, 19 years old, young ladies could not defend themselves against 6-foot guys that are in these camps and coming down and just terrorizing the people in the store and taking what they wanted. So I stepped up a little bit and started protecting them there. And then I started to get a little angry and going out into the community and see what was happening in the communities. And the same thing was happening there, where people were getting their property broken into, cars broken into, they had property stolen and things happening, threats being made to them over this encampment. So I started to take a closer look at it. And I said to myself, somebody's got to step up and start talking about this, and something's got to be done. I started to make some complaints, and I see that the city police did step in a little bit there and cleaned it out at one time. We appreciate that being happening, and they got it down to about 6 tents, but they didn't finish the job. They left those 6 tents there, and it's rebuilt again, and it's now happening again. We're going through another cycle, and this needs to be dealt with, and it dealt with immediately. This type of behavior is unacceptable in our community. This is a safety. I've had these people come up to me, nose to nose, threaten me in my place of work while they're trying to take bags and fill them of property and walk out of stores thinking that they can do just what they want and what they please. This is unacceptable behavior in our town. I have some things that I'd like to read out from people in the community that have given me, that have experienced different things that have happened to them. I have a lady, her name is Sally. She's an elderly lady that lives on the south end of Civic Center and sees this stuff going on every day. And this is what she said. She said, at the beginning of May, the park has been occupied by squatters who have terrorized the Civic Field neighborhood. Shootings, stabbings, fires, thefts, the list goes on and on. And she feels that this board and this community has let the community down and has done nothing about it. And they have watched the quality of their homes' life disappear. They feel that they're trapped in their home over this. They can't go out. I've talked to other single mothers in the area that have children, and they just stay in their homes because they're afraid to come out around in their community, to take their kids out and do Pokemon walks in their games because of what's happening over there. I have another lady that I'd like to speak that has sent me some things of what's happening in her area. She actually lives on the east side of the Civic Center, and she has given me a couple of things to say. And it says, things that I've witnessed since this has been going on there. I said, I saw a woman in her yard with her breast hanging out, digging in the side of her house until her hands were bleeding, claiming that she was looking for a key. She ended up taking off all her clothes in the alley, and they asked her to leave. And then they found needles and stuff near where she was digging and that type of thing happening. Countless of people are defecating and urinating in the alley, in the yards, and even in the streets as people are walking by with their children. There's continuous screaming, fighting. Neighbor's grandson was nearly kidnapped in the area. Their lives have been threatened many times over this. I myself have been threatened in my job dealing with this type of problem. And luckily, I can handle myself. These young girls can't.
Mr. Arano, could I please have you start wrapping it up?
Okay? Well, something needs to be done. So what's going to start happening in the community is we don't start seeing some action. I have a feeling the community is going to start to get together, and because these people are on city's property, there's going to start being lawsuits filed against the city of Lethbridge for not dealing with this and allowing this to happen on their property. And if it doesn't start getting taken care of right away, there's probably going to be some other authorities come in that's going to be come in and brought in to handle this situation. We ask that you take care of it, fence it up, do what you need to do, and help these people in the same time.
Thank you very much.
for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the community who would like to come up and speak to this? Could I please have you state your first and last name, and I do need you to sign up on this sheet, please. Thank you.
My name is Angeline McDonald. I'm with Search and Rescue as well. We've had multiple call-outs. We're tasked by the LRPS or whatever agency we're tasked by, and we're dumpster diving and responding to articles that have been used there and causing issues. So meaning we could be responding to weapons. I'm not coming on that point. I'm coming now to use a citizen of Lethbridge that owns 2 homes in the London Road Association area. I have one on 9th and one on 8th, and I own those homes. I have 3 service dogs, and at my place, I live next to Harbor House, which is the YWCA. I have needles in my yard every night. I've had my dogs tried to be poisoned. On my 9th Street house, my renter there, his dog was poisoned and nearly died 2 years ago, Canine Casper, a detection dog for the police. My concern is there has been, this year alone, 3 fires set behind my home at the back of a homeowner's place, so behind the Y. And had I not seen that, that entire, we called the fire department, the truck was too long, so they had to mitigate that and facilitate that from the front of the street on the other side because the fire truck is too big, too wide to get into the back alley. And definitely there was a fire set. Oh, I'm just trying to stay warm. What about the people that own the homes? What about me paying my taxes? I pay them, and I pay it for both houses. And I gladly pay that, and I would gladly pay more if we had people that would be very serious about keeping me and my family safe. My husband has been in this community since he's been 8, and I moved from up north, and I am a business owner in the community as well. I work very hard. What my concern in this whole thing is, how do the children stay safe on my street? There's needles everywhere. They're walking in their bare feet in the summer. The safety consumption site closed, and it all moved right next to my house. They've burned holes in my fences. They've defaced my property. They have stolen things. They tried to break into my house. Well, welcome to the German Shepherd world, because you're not safe when you come into my house. That's a whole different ballgame. I have 12 cameras on my place. I have trail cams. I have registered everything with the city, and I'm about to get 5 more tomorrow. So this is what I'm saying is, as an emergency responder, I have to respond to these calls. Taking it away from there, I'm also a citizen of Lethbridge, and I'm a proud citizen here. I've been here a long, long time. I want to feel safe. I have to incur extra expenses to stay safe. We are trying to take care of each other, and I too sit on the board of the London Road Association. I do the security in the area. So none of us have ever been approached, and we have not forwarded a letter saying that we consent to this. Wherever that come from, that is misinformation. We just want to be safe. Now, Joe would have been here, Joe Secretan would have been here today, the president of the London Road Association. Unfortunately, he's very sick. I'm not speaking on behalf of him. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and 2 homes in the area. This encampment is causing a lot of problems. A, nobody's safe. B, it transcends from that specific spot, and it just filters down 9th Street and then onto 8th Street. So our homes become worthless. We've all renovated our homes. My home is recently renovated in the last 4 years. Lots of money went into my home. I don't feel it's worth $1, and I'll tell you why. Who wants to buy it when I'm next to this? I'm not saying that there isn't a problem to address and people that are homeless do need a place to stay. I'm not saying that. I have empathy. I'm in critical incident stress management with Search and Rescue Alberta. I understand. But what people need to understand is us as taxpayers need to be safe. So if you need to mitigate a place, please pick a different place, not in the London Road area, so that my friends here who own homes that also want to speak, we need to feel safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. McDonald. We'll hold that applause, please. Thank you. Does anybody else from the community wish to speak? You can come on up to the podium. Please state your first and last name, and we'll get you to sign up on the sign-up sheet. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Shanna Collins. I live right across the street from the encampment. I'm directly behind Crazy Cakes. Ron was reading some of my statement that I sent him before. I just thought I'd give you some instances that I've witnessed. So there was the lady that was looking for her keys, constant defecating and urinating. My neighbor's grandson was nearly kidnapped. My life has been threatened countless times, and most recently a female threatened to kill me and my 10-pound chihuahua. She also said she would barbecue my dog. Someone's broken into my landlord's garage and neighbor's garage in the same weekend. There was a shooting across the street. Multiple instances of one person being jumped and attacked by 15 other people from that park. Women screaming and reports of rape. An elderly man was attacked and pinned to the ground bleeding. A man was hit by a car and the driver turned around and ran over the victim again. Countless people doing drugs all over the area, not trying to hide it. Needles and drug debris constantly found in my yard. I have to check the yard every day before I let my dog out. My 12-year-old nephew can't walk around the block anymore to catch Pokemon. We fear for his safety. A woman screaming for hours about the Bloods in the crypt while wielding and flailing a huge garden hoe woke me up the day before yesterday. Constantly being asked for money, garbage, and drugged out people are everywhere. There's a stolen van left in my backyard last month. The owner of the van had her house broken into and her van keys stolen. The stolen property inside the van was someone else's, not hers. I'm unable to walk through the sidewalk to my therapy as the sidewalk itself is completely blocked off by tents, and I'm threatened nearly every time I walk by just for looking at them. People are spray painting stolen bikes and changing parts on them to sell. The ambulance is constantly there. I often wake up to people tapping on my bedroom window, asking for money or leaning up against it to do their drugs. High people are everywhere, unable to walk or talk. Multiple people overdosed and looking dead while taking my dog and nephew for a walk. 2 of my friends' vehicles have been stolen from outside my house. One was used in a robbery and the other was found smashed into a BFI bin and full of needles. Drug deals in my alley and even right in the street, blatantly obvious. What looks like Johns are constantly parked there waiting for their customers. Outdoor equipment and my chairs have been stolen. Threats to poison my dog as well. Threats to burn down my house. My elderly neighbor is afraid to leave her house. Someone tried breaking into my house with a crowbar and peeled all the metal off my door with it. The person was never found. My nephew should feel safe when he comes to my house, and I should feel safe living in it. These conditions are absolutely outrageous and should not be tolerated. I'd also like to say that I'm not an insensitive person. I myself have lost 3 friends due to this drug pandemic. It seemed to have hit my generation really, really badly. But I don't want to see that, and it's heartbreaking to have reminders of it every day. And I also would like to say that I do not support the sober shelter being there. I want these people to actually get sober, not have a shelter and then be able to walk 2 blocks downtown to go find their drugs again. I feel it should be out of town, so it's more safe for the community, and we don't have to witness these crazy things and have our children and our loved ones put at risk. Lots of people are saying that this is a homeless problem. I'm sure there are a few homeless people there, but I very much think that this is a drug and crime problem, and it needs to be addressed. I've lived in this house for 14 years. My landlord is a lawyer here in town. And he's absolutely fed up with it too. And it doesn't seem like anything is being done. There's a lot of concerned neighbors. And we haven't even been informed about some of these meetings. I just got word of you know, you guys had a bulletin here with a whole bunch of information about the sober center in the hallways, I heard. I didn't hear about that. I think the community needs to be more informed about what's going on, because I feel if more people knew, that there would be more concerned citizens here right now, because there's lots in the neighborhood that feel the same way as I do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins. Do we have other members of the community who'd like to come forward and speak? Please state your first and last name and sign up on the sheet. Thank you very much.
My name is Sharon Gold. I've been a widow for the last 15 years, and I have people coming into my yard. I had a dog at one time, and that's the only reason they quit. I don't have a dog now. I can't go outside at night in my front yard. They're sleeping on the boulevard, or they're trying to get into my van. I don't feel safe, and I should. I'm a senior. I deserve that, and so does everybody else. But I live alone. I do not support it being in the arena. I do not support it at all. I think it's time that we actually did something. I feel bad for them, but you tell me why they have empty beds at the shelter. It's not full. It's because they have to be tested when they go in, so they don't go in. That's why they're out here. They're trying to make us do something we don't want to do. And I don't want these people as my neighbors or friends putting up with this. It's beyond ridiculous. I find needles, I find condoms, I find clothes, and I shouldn't have to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gold. Do we have other members from the community who'd like to come forward and speak on this? Please come forward. Please state your first and last name at the podium, and I do need you to sign up on the sign-up sheet, please. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Sally Fitzgerald. I live right opposite the Civic Field. I have watched squatters since the beginning of May take over the neighborhood. The ringleader has lived in the same tent. He's now on his 4th or 5th free tent. Nobody has removed him. His dog messes all over the park. I have dog licenses. I pick up after my dog. Nothing is done to these people. I don't understand your inability to clean out a public area. I wish you would live here at night. Thanksgiving weekend, a warm fall night, full moon. You should have been here the whole weekend, party in the park. But nothing is ever done. I don't understand it. They sit with meth pipes on the sidewalk. I live with my 94-year-old father. I beg him not to open the door every day. They come up to the door, they knock for money. What are we to do as paying residents? I pay my property taxes. I pay for all my licenses that I need. I need you to help our neighborhood. It's become a ghetto. And we have historic houses in the neighborhood. We take pride in our homes. We need some help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fitzgerald. Please state your first and last name and sign up on the sign-up sheet.
I've lived around here.
Could you please state your first and last name
Sure.
first?
Danielson is my name. I live at 1106 Fifth Avenue, next door to Crazy Cakes.
Very much.
I've lived here pretty well all my life, and I just don't understand how I'm all for helping the poor, but I just don't get it when the poor are obstructing kids from using a library that's 2 blocks from my home. I know adults that won't go there no more. They say, no, I'll go to the west side, or I'll do it online. But I'm not using a public place like that I have to walk through this. So my question is, it's difficult. It's a difficult answer to this, but where do we start to look where things are legal and not legal, and there's laws for some people and not for others. Can't we come up with something that's, you can't do this, you're in jail. There's a home for you. You did something wrong. The humble people that were, the poor humble people there, you asked them to leave. They obeyed the rules, they left. A lot of them that stayed obviously aren't obeying the rules. I've objected to this one time not even publicly, I just mentioned to some people, you really want to help these people? They're giving them 3 meals a day. I know guys that have traveled all over the world. They say you go to any shelter anywhere, you get 1 meal a day. So are we enabling them? Have we asked these questions? Because it looks pretty elementary to slow it down. But to fix it, the poor will always be with us. It won't happen. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Do we have any other members from the community who would like to come up and speak to this? I'll ask again, do we have any other members in the audience who would like to come up and speak to this? Come forward to the podium. Please state your first and last name, and I do need you to sign up on the sign-up sheet.
My name is Chris Koshman, and I was just a witness to an incident that was there just 3 months ago. At the moment, I'm homeless, and I'm sleeping in my car, and I sleep right at the Spunnet shop there. And I was awakened by a car pulled up down the street, and he just stopped, like at the car's angle park, and he pulled around, and then he stopped, and he just got out of his car, and he had yelled, I'm from Rocket. Anybody here from Rocket? And all of a sudden, like, Tent City just woke up, like, and a swarm just started running towards him. And so he got in his car, and the one fella, he was the first one, he jumped over the chain link fence, and this guy in the car just went and just ran him right over. And within like 5 minutes, you know, which is nice, the police were there, and well, they picked him up and started carrying him back to Tent City there. And within 5 minutes, the police were there, and this fellow was gone. I don't know if he was ever caught or not, but that was just something that I witnessed at the moment, and I just happened to be there, and it was just that was it. Sorry, thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the community who would like to speak to this? Do we have anybody else in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to this? All right, seeing none, I'm going to turn this over to questions from council. Up first, I have Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do have a few questions. I first want to thank the presenters, all of you, for coming forward and sharing your concerns. I'm sure you're well aware that many of us share those same frustrations. And I know it's easy for me to say I don't live in the area, but trust me, I do share those frustrations. It's very complex, extremely complex. But I do have some questions that I want to, knowing that we can do better, we should do better, and how that is. And I do have a few questions, and the first one I want to ask is from the first presenter, and I'm sorry, sir, if I forgot your name, but I just will recall what was mentioned about how it got down to about 6/10, and then you know, it ended up growing to what it is again today. And so I guess to our city manager as designate, why is it that we could bring it down to the level it was, and why has it gotten so out of control again?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. So as you've touched on, there's no doubt that there's a lot of frustration here, and it is a very complex and challenging issue, as we've heard from the presenters today. Unfortunately, or as all of us know, this isn't a situation that is unique to Lethbridge or Canada by any means. We're seeing this across North America. And Mr. Fox and his team and LPS, who's here today, have done a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work on this, and to work with the numbers of encampments to get them to where they were. And to get into those details, I will actually turn it over to Mr. Fox and his team from there.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, we were able to dramatically reduce the number with one of our coordinated cleanups. And what that means is we work with all service providers, including LPS. We do outreach. We try and get as many of the vulnerable population into services. And how we do that, there's many different ways. So we do continue to receive calls to that site all the time, and we continue to do outreach. We do assessments of it, and LPS is there daily doing what they can do. So I won't speak for LPS on the matter of enforcing some of the rules out in the area, but I can confirm that we do continue to try and get people in services, but the numbers of tents do fluctuate out there as we get people into services, are able to take down other items or tents because of lots of various reasons to dispose of them.
I just, because I want to add on to that is I know the comment that will continually come back is they don't have any place to go. We're gonna move from here to another location. It's going to happen. My concern, and I've heard from various different communities out there that I've contacted, is that you can't let this grow more and more. As we've heard, Bloods, Crips from another presenter, this stuff this stuff happens, and you start to build up gang activity. We've heard of a gun. Someone was shot. Someone was stabbed. We've also heard, and I'd like to get this confirmed if I could, understanding there was another gun was reported last week. Is that true? Do you know? And I want to preface this a little bit because there was, we've got incredible people that are out there trying to help and do the compassionate cleanup, and I totally understand that. But when we have staff or those from different agencies out there and someone waves a gun to them, that safety issue scares the living crap out of me. And this is what we really need to deal with, the entrenchment as it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's that gang activity. And I'll tell you something, I've went over and I've chatted with these individuals, and I said, why are you building up, and why did more and more people come here? And I've been told that it's, if this side gets more people, we need more on our side. How do we deal with this? And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say a little more about some of the other concerns that are happening there.
Administration shares your concerns. Any entrenched encampment from every area that we talk with across the country shares those concerns. Once an encampment is entrenched, it does become more dangerous. And again, on the website, we have provided all the communities that we are in communication with and what they are doing, and some of the pilots that some places are doing, and the links to their strategies as well. As far as a gun, yes, we were made aware of a gun. It wasn't waived at one of our service providers. We were notified by a public resident, and LPS did deal with that. I would have to refer that to LPS for any other comments, but we were notified of that one.
And so we each time we ask, and we ask on a quite a regular basis, is what more could we do? Why aren't these coming down? And I apologize to our staff because I know you do what you can do, but have you heard of anything else that we can do to mitigate this? It's hearing from other communities. What else is there? And is there anything that those around this horseshoe that make these decisions, or direct administration, or direct our city manager who passed it along, that we can do to help those that are struggling with all of these concerns in this community?
In talking with lots of communities and the province, one of the things Lethbridge lacks is shelter capacity, and that's an ongoing issue. So one thing that we can do is allow for a shelter to be developed somewhere for extra beds. So that is one item, but also the whole continuum of care. when we continue to work and advocate with the province. It is their jurisdiction, but continuing to get permanent supportive housing and the rest of the continuum. Help these people get into different programs, and there are lots out there. And I know that a lot of the council members and yourself, Mayor, that you work on advocating with the province and other agencies to move this forward. So, but no, I haven't heard of one single answer across the whole country besides working with all the different stakeholders involved on this complex issue.
I do have more, but I'll step out because I'm sure there's others. Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Carlson.
Again, I appreciate the member. Oh, sorry, my camera's button is not working. Oh well. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I appreciate you and the members of committee allowing other members of council the opportunity to be here and ask questions. Also, thank the presenters. Appreciate hearing some of your issues and concerns, and want to let you know that we all are focused on trying to find solutions for our entire community. Madam Chair, I'm not sure who to ask this to. I'll ask it through you, probably to administration, because while we're talking about encampments at the moment, a lot of the issues that were brought up, and I'm sure members of the committee are going to take a lot of the questions and comments from the speakers and try and get some answers to those questions. But a lot of the comments were around needle debris, drug paraphernalia, et cetera, which isn't really on the agenda today. And so I'd like to just, maybe it's the deputy clerk can remind me, we did have a presentation some time back from Community Social Development. I think it was Mr. Fox and Mr. Bowe perhaps presented, and there was some disturbing numbers in there, and the rise of needle debris, drug paraphernalia that has been found and removed or cleaned up around the city. And it coincided with the removal of the supervised consumption site. And I'm wondering, was that this committee that received that report?
It was.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if that could be recirculated, because I know it wasn't on today's agenda, but I think that's one of the issues, and we haven't touched on it in any of the recommendations today. It's all about encampments, but I hear the concerns of the presenters around needle debris, drug use, et cetera. And I wonder if there are some solutions that could be found for that, whether it's revisiting the supervised consumption site that the province shut down. I believe the report made it fairly clear that since that was shut down, needle debris has skyrocketed. And so I'm wondering if we could recirculate that to members of administration or this committee and try and find some solutions to those problems. Is that possible through you to the city manager or designate?
Through the chair, we can recirculate it. We can provide a link out to all committee members.
Thank you. Yes, well, I believe the encampments are an issue, and we are discussing that today. Many of the concerns I'm hearing from the public are in the safety issue of the needle debris or drug debris being found. So maybe we can find some solutions for that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
No, Mr. Romano, I will have you. No, I'm going to have.
This has to do with the violence that's going on.
I'm going to ask you to please take a seat. I want you to please take a seat. Thank you. Mr. City Manager, you had a comment?
Yes, just connecting with the team here. I think to Mr. Fox's comment, one number that might be useful for council is based on the preliminary data that's come out of the point-in-time count, which counts the number of unhoused residents, I guess is probably the appropriate term. We have shelter capacity in the range of 100, and the preliminary data out of the point-in-time count is around 400. So that speaks to what could be done. And so, of course, that falls into the realm of the province around the shelter capacity, shelter expansion, and so forth. Municipality certainly can weigh into that territory, but there are cost and tax implications associated. So that's some information I think that might be helpful to members as far as the gap that exists in the ability to house individuals and start off in that continuum of care from emergency shelter up through the remainder of the continuum.
When will we receive the information on the point-in-time count?
Through the chair, it's going to be, the formal report will be in the first couple weeks of November.
Very much, Mr. Fox. Councillor Middleton, Councillor Carlson, you were done?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thank you to the presenters who took the time out of their day to come down and express the concerns today specifically in regards to the impact that the encampment is having on their lives. I think just about everybody in this room knows my opinions about this, knows the efforts that I've gone through to try and assist in mitigating this problem. This is a serious problem in this city. There is no question about it, and this council and this administration does take it seriously. I want to reassure you of that. I have two questions. One will be going, actually they'll both be going through the city manager or to his designate. The first is, displacement does occur. We recognize that when we put pressure onto a particular area, displacement occurs, and there are additional implications for whether it's housing, whether it's any type of enforcement action that we take. It does create a displacement. So the first question that I have is, and this may be to Staff Sergeant Williamson, I'm giving you a bump, in regards to some comments that have been made publicly in regards to the displacement that has occurred at the encampments. Is this creating additional problems at the public library as a result of trying to dismantle these encampments? So I would ask that through our city manager to Staff Sergeant Williamson. So effectively, the question is the work that we're doing on the encampments to try and dismantle the encampments, trying to deal with the homeless problems that we're dealing with, because we are taking these specific actions, is that having an impact on the number and the level of insecurity that we're experiencing at the library? Did it exist before?
It did exist before. It was the problems at the library we've been dealing with for years. Has the number of people increased? It's really hard to say, but we have been dealing with this for years and years at the public library.
Okay, thank you. The next question to the city manager. We've heard we really have heard a certain amount of the concerns from the public as to we need more of this, we need more of that, we need less of this. I'd like city administration to articulate for the people that are in attendance today, what are we doing and where do we see this problem going in the foreseeable future? So what are the solutions that we have now that we're working on that will have an impact on the issues that we're talking about today?
Through the chair, I guess I could start with back when council allocated the extra $230,000 to put towards some of these issues. We've, through looking at what other communities are doing and working with our stakeholders, we have come up with a new process of dealing with encampments this fall. And we have seen it effective on getting more people into services and working with police. We've had a lot of success on some of the areas around town. So one thing that we would need is, right now it's more ad hoc in nature. So some of our service providers that we are funding to do outreach and different types of service as clean sweep and other types there, we've extended contracts, but those contracts have only been for several months, where it's hard to get full-time people to stay in those jobs. So staff retention has been an issue. If the initiatives through the budget cycle are upheld, we'll be able to more formalize the responses to these. One of the big benefits of having the same people address to people facing homelessness is that they start to understand the clientele and also form relationships and even gain trust to help people get into services. That's hard to do over a couple months, but by having constant service providers, that pressure on them and offering services, it lends to get more people into the system. So that is one thing that would help to have a more formalized area. I hope that helped answer the question. I think there was another part to your question which I'm not remembering.
It goes on and on and on. And I appreciate that, but through the city manager to both yourself and to Staff Sergeant Williamson, what additional resources do you need? What help do you need to have a more sustainable impact on this problem?
For outreach and what the city is doing, again, I believe we have the right services in place. To have them there for longer would help, and that would need sustained funding. As for enforcement, I would have to pass that on to Sergeant Williams.
That is really a loaded question, and as you're aware, by law, we are very limited in what we can and cannot do at an encampment or dealing with a tent city. Our hands are tied in terms of legally what we can do, and we're running into many challenges with that, because as we know, we can't just go in and take down tents. We don't have the legal authority to do that. As for resources, the way we are going, I believe it's effective. We are calling out members on a regular basis for encampment cleanups and enforcement. Honestly, I don't see if you throw more resources at it, it may need to be carried on for an extended period of time.
Thank you. To members of the public, you've heard some of the things that we're doing and what we plan on doing. Is it enough?
Through the chair, I think also continuing advocacy for more shelter space is a major one. Also working with to make sure we pave the road to be able to get the right services in the city is another step. I think another step too is also making sure that we understand what data we need to gather to make sure that we're doing the proper responses is another part that we'll continue to try and get better at.
Okay. You're familiar with the other business motion that's coming forward in regards to the downtown clean and safe funding strategy. Did you want to speak to that at all, Mr. Fox?
I could try, but yes, I am aware of a motion that may be coming forward.
We'll hold off talking on that because we are out of context at this point, and we want to bring that business motion forward at a council meeting when we can speak more fully to that.
Just simply that we are enacting, we're bringing forward motions that address how to deal with this problem more constructively and provide relief for others in the community.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Middleton Hope. Did you have further questions? Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just want to iterate what my colleagues have said. Thanks to the people that have come forward. It breaks my heart to hear the things that you have to go through on a regular basis. And I see Staff Sergeant Williamson is here, and it's a very broad question. You've kind of alluded to it as well, but I just want to get the LPS perspective of what's going on here. Maybe if you can just give how a daily the daily routine goes for you, and you know, you're hearing the public saying, well, nothing's being done. I'm sure that's you've said that. It's very frustrating for what you're limited to do. But if you can expand on the frustration that you feel, or just kind of the sense of where you're at. It's kind of a philosophical question, I think, in a lot of ways.
So on a daily basis, I am deploying my downtown police officers to attend the encampments, along with other calls for service, which they do also have to maintain as well. A lot of officers are frustrated by the fact that we are so limited in what we can do in terms of enforcement. Would we like to go in and rip down all the tents and move them all to another location where they're safer? Yeah, absolutely, but we can't. And so it is a source of frustration for us. In terms of enforcement, we have very clear direction as to how we're to deal with this. Are we enforcing? Yes, we are. What it is, it falls under the Trespass to Premises Act and the Petty Trespass Act, and what our direction is first we will, if it's a new person there, they've already been served notice that they are trespassing on city property, they then are served a ticket. It's a violation ticket of $600. And I'll tell you quite honestly, we know those aren't going to be paid. Based on the people that are there. Then our next step is, we may do that on a couple of occasions, then we step it up, which is we summons them to court. What we're running into is, after so many, in one instance we've given 8 court appearances to one individual. At what point do we have to say, does this become fruitless? And so what we are now directing is those that have the 8 or 9 court appearances, we're not issuing any more, because honestly it is fruitless. However, anyone new in the encampments, we identify them, and we start at the very basics again. If we could do more, we absolutely would, but we do not have the authority. The tents is a very contentious issue, and taking that down, because it forms a person's part of their dwelling house. My guys are going there, my team is going there every single day. We are dealing with, quite honestly, the volume of stolen property there is more than we can handle or the capacity to hold. Do we take items of significance? And what I mean by that, for example, high-end bikes that are stolen, a lot of times we can't prove the identity of who actually is responsible for taking it, because these people know that if they are asked, oh, not my bike, won't claim responsibility for it. So I have one officer on a daily basis is seizing anywhere from 5 to 7 bikes every day that he's on shift. But again, the sheer volume of stolen property, we know it's there, but it's, however, it's more than we can handle capacity-wise in the exhibits as well. And it goes on from there, if you will. And do we know we are displacing them? Yes, we know that. And as we've been working with the city, it is a collaborative effort. Enforcement is not the answer, in my personal opinion. It has to be a collaborative effort. And is it working? I think we're seeing some progress there, and there are some positives that are coming out of it. Will we solve this? No. Will homelessness be here for years to come? Yes, it will be. However, I still think as we work as a collective group, we can help the situation and come with solutions.
And I guess, you know, thank you for that answer. I guess with the people that are in the chambers here, what can you say to them who are frustrated on a daily basis and they're just saying nothing's being done? I mean, I know we know something's being done, but and I'm sure you're as frustrated. But what can you say to these people? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that too, but
honestly, does my heart go out to these people? Absolutely. As I've said before, we are not the answer. We are not going to solve homelessness or those problems that are associated to that just by law enforcement alone. It does have to be a collaborative effort. This is being experienced in every community in North America, and there isn't a resolve in any community right now. And yeah, my heart goes out to them. I don't know what else to tell them. We are doing absolutely everything we possibly can in terms of a law enforcement perspective, but legally we are bound, and it is tying our hands.
thank you very much for the responses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Well, I do see some hands going up in the audience. We will not be taking any further comments from the audience. We have moved past that portion of today's discussion. Deputy, no questions from the audience. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Parker.
Maybe just to help out the chairperson here, I want to make sure we follow the process here. But we as members can ask you guys questions, and you guys can answer it. So just hold on for 1 second, okay? We don't want to get this into a debate, so it's just rather us ask you some questions as well, okay? So just be patient with the process here. So first of all, I want to thank, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, and a lot of people know where I stand on this, but so I want to give some context first of all. The city manager cannot go out there and tell the police what to do. I think that's very important that people know that. The city manager and his staff, there's a certain line where they can and cannot do things, okay? So a lot of people go, why don't you guys make the police do that, the police do that? We can't. Under the Police Act, there's a very separate thing. We have City Hall, and then we have the police, okay? So it's very important that we don't say, well, why isn't the city doing that and the city doing this? Because the city manager, not that his hands are tied, but legally, he just can't tell the police chief what to do. He can't even tell Staff Sergeant Williamson what to do. It's a separate body, and we have a separate governance body, which is the police commission that does that. So I just wanted to let people understand that. Now, this is my perspective on what's going on in this community here, and I've been very, very vocal on this. And you have all the right, pardon my language, to be pissed right off. And you can take that to the bank and mark the tape there, because you have all the right to be very, very angry, because it confuses us when something illegal is happening, such as trespassing on public property, that we cannot go as a police service and say, you can't do this, you cannot do this. And I always wonder, like, if someone put a tent on my front grass of my house, I would call the police, and I'm guessing, Staff Sergeant Williamson, you would probably ask that person to remove himself because he is trespassing. Am I correct?
Yes, if the owner of the property says, please do so, it's on my property. Yes.
Perfect. So the city of Lethbridge, Civic Square, that whole area there, in regards to Civic Field, that is the community's public space. So is it the police's responsibility to make sure if people are trespassing that you must do your job? Now, what you've said is it's kind of a really gray area, and you don't want to go because it's people's rights to have shelter and all that. I challenge that personally, because I think we should remove them. And if people don't like what they've done, take us to court. And that's what now, what I did notice when the police did go out there and enforce and take down a lot of tents and all that, there was a consequence to that in our community. If you saw after a lot of the tents were removed, the problem really just spread out throughout the downtown area. So I was a very, very strong proponent of the police getting out there and enforcing and all that. And I think they did do that a month and a half ago, but there was a consequence to that. Some people go, wow, this area looks really, really good. But I think what happened is the whole problem just became diluted throughout the community, because now you see tents in certain areas of the community that you didn't see tents and all that. My concern, and this is to Mr. Fox here, is we talk about the shelter, the sober shelter, and I was against this area of becoming a shelter. These folks here, I believe these people do have homes. I believe they do have homes. I just don't think they want to go home to wherever they live, because this has become a hangout. So even if we did put up the shelter there, the sober shelter, there's no way you could tell these folks that are in these tents to go to that shelter. Am I correct?
Correct.
So now we're going to have, if passed, if we don't know what's going, I don't know what's exactly happening with the sober shelter and all that. So here's a question. Some people ask me in the community is, why don't you just fence the area off and not allow these people to do this and no longer give them access? Could we put up, and I asked that question to the city manager, and I do believe Mr. City Manager is speaking. You said we could, but that doesn't solve the problem. I think
that's correct. Yes, that is absolutely possible, but as you mentioned, does it solve the problem? No, it displaces the problem, so you could end up with a number of pockets of the same issue in a number of different areas of the city then, as opposed to here.
So and I appreciate it. And Mr. Manager, your team has done an amazing job, and I want to thank you for that, answering all our questions over the last few months. So my colleague to the right, Councillor Mills Hope, really sent you a softball saying, is this a resource issue? And I know that you can't speak on behalf of the chief and all that, but my honest opinion, just from common sense, this kind of things, the more police officers you have in these people's faces saying, you cannot be here, you cannot do this, and next time you put up a tent, we're going to take it down, and if you put a tent over and put it in Gyro Park, we're going to take it down, and if you put a tent in Galt Gardens, we're going to take it down. If you create an atmosphere where people go, heck, I don't even want to put up a tent in Lethbridge because the cops are all over me like flies to you-know-what. So why can't we add more police officers through the budget process? Do you think that would help your situation?
First of all, let me answer. We do not take down any of the tents because we do not have any legal authority to do that. We are not taking down the tents. It's clean sweep if they're abandoned, but it is not police that is taking down the tents. We do not have a legal authority in this country right now to give us the authority to come in and take down the tents, period. Will more law enforcement, and yes, I cannot speak for the chief, but will more law enforcement present help? Maybe. I don't know. But again, we can't take down the tents. We don't have a legal authority to do so. Maybe I'll ask the next question to Mr. Fox here. Some communities go to extremes in making sure negative behavior doesn't happen. I think there's a place in Manitoba right now that are using high-pitched sound. I don't want to, because these are humans and all that, but if there's issues like that, is there an issue maybe we could create an environment where this is just like light, have bright lights all over the place? I'm thinking outside the box here. Because as soon as 4 tents go up, 8 tents, 16, 32, 64, and what I've noticed is when the tents all went down, people are kind of like, yeah, this is getting better, even though it's spread out. But it's gotten bigger and bigger once again. I drive by on a daily basis, taking my son to football practice, and it seems like it's getting bigger. Have we looked at creating different kind of features in the area to make it so unenticing?
Through the chair, we have talked to other communities that have used those devices in certain areas. The applications are very specific in nature. I know that in my previous roles, I have used some of those in certain public spaces to make sure people don't stay there very long. But again, it doesn't solve the issue that we're talking to. However, could we put it in this location? We could. I would like to have more time to look at this exact location. I think what we would do is move the issue to a new location, though, and have the same issue again. So could we? Yes. Would it move it? Yes. And then how many devices do we want? And is the park space going to be used for other activities where it probably wouldn't be, people wouldn't want to be there?
Thank you, Mr. Fox. And my Madam Chair, Shannon and Dan, you heard a lot of our questions and the answers that we got. And we sometimes don't like the answers, but those are the answers, and those are the facts. Do you guys have a follow-up question at all of what you may have heard from what you heard here? Because I saw that you raised your hand. I don't want this to become an opportunity to debate, because this isn't a debate. This is a matter of just getting some education, getting some points on the table. Do you have something that you wanted to add, or do you have a question? Yes. Yeah, feel free to come to the microphone. Just because you did raise your hand, and so.
I'm just wondering, when the tents were taken down, a couple of weeks before that, there was a shooting there, and I had my life threatened, so I called the police. Police straight up told me, nope, there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. Our hands are tied. About 2 days after that, they came in with a K-9 unit, and that day, there was about 85 tents that they had taken down. I think there was maybe 4 or 5 that were left. My question is, how do they claim that they can't do this? So we can't do it, we don't have the authority, but someone did. Someone went in there and got rid of 85 of them. What happened to the other 6? Why wasn't the job finished? And my other question is, they're stating that there's police there all the time and people cleaning up the camp. That is absolutely not true. I live across the street, I watch it daily. I just walked by there yesterday for my appointment, and there is needle debris everywhere. And not just needle debris, garbage all over the park. So I'm wondering when this is happening, because I'm not seeing it, and I don't understand how we can get 85 tents taken away within a day, but yet we're left with 6. If it was completely empty, you know, the neighbors could call if they see one person putting up a tent. Call, well, there's just one person. One officer comes down and says, you can't do that. I mean, I have tents. Can I go pitch my tent at Japanese Gardens on your public property? Can I go hang out and just chill and sleep at Japanese Gardens? Probably not. Why would that be allowed, right?
Thank you, and thank you very much. Appreciate that. Dan, is it Dan? Yeah. Ron, sorry, Ron. Ron, you had another question, or you were on? Remember, this is just not debate. It's just is there a follow-up question that what you may have heard? If you come to the microphone, just so that our people online can hear you as well.
I just want to know if you guys know what the definition of dwelling is. Go look it up, because this property, these tents don't fall in the definition of dwelling. You've got to have electrical hookups, water pipes, and all that to be considered a dwelling, for number one. Number two, I would like to know how Calgary and Edmonton, you can go online and on YouTube and put in tent encampments, and you can see it being taken down in those cities. Why can't it be done here?
And out of fairness, do you have a follow-up question, Miss? And it's up to council, these members of this board, to ask these questions on your behalf, okay?
Hope. That's what we need. We need to dispel fear. We're homeowners. We've never said we're not going to pay our taxes. We don't feel like it because there's an encampment in our area. Hope. You talk about a continuum of care. You talk about what we haven't heard is these people, and they are people, need to want help. They need to want to change. They need to want to stop the drug use or get sober or get mental health help, because we understand, all of us have empathy, all of us understand the difference, but you have to want to change, you have to be the change. So we sit in our homes, we hope that we're safe, we hope no one breaks in, and my concern is, where's the education? We can all talk about a continuum of care till the cows come home. But these people need to want to engage in change. You can't force a person who's an alcoholic to want to stop drinking. You can't force a drug addict to not put a needle in their arm. It's education. It's explaining to them this is a death sentence, or I want to give you hope that there is something out there for you, maybe not this. In that change, you provide safety for our community. You provide hope. That's what we're asking for. That's what all of us are asking for, that our children can walk down the street. This isn't just drug paraphernalia. This is violence in our neighborhood. This is seniors that can't come out at night. This is people that want hope. I'm not asking you to make it up. No one asked you to get your magic bucket out and say, oh, there's some hope. We're asking you to provide hope by giving us some resolution to the situation, which is an ongoing problem. I myself feel there is not enough police officers. I feel there needs to be a huge budget so we do have more manpower on the ground. Boots on the ground, a heavier presence. This will give us, no disrespect, sir, I know that you guys are taxed to the limit. I serve under you. And from the minute they hit their trucks and they get 150 calls, they got to go to the most high priority.
I'm sorry, I just asked.
I get
do you have a follow-up question?
My question is can you offer us hope? Can you help us with the continuum of care? Is there resources available that we can get an education system started so that there's counseling, mental health care, so that there can be change? Because with change, we can eliminate this problem. Without that, it doesn't matter. It's all barriers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to ask those questions.
Mayor Higgin.
Actually, I do have a few, but you know what? I don't know if we're going to get, or I don't believe I'll get to where I want to be with my asking these questions. But I do want to make one comment. I saw a letter that went out to the community of just surrounding the area there, and so talking in London Road area. And there was a letter that went out, and I want all of you here that live in that area to know that there's never been approved a shelter to go in the civic arena. That is not approved. They were looking into it. There has never been an approval. That would come back to council. So I want to make sure, because I know in the letter, council approved a shelter in the civic. That is not true at all. So I just want to make sure that you all know that. There's no approval for a shelter in the civic. The next thing I wanted to mention, and the reason I'm stating that is I've received a few calls, actually quite a few, from minor hockey where I'm concerned for children's safety that go to that arena. And now it's my understanding that they're having to look at security there. And I wanted to know from Mr. City Manager, as designate, are we providing security, or is that something that you've received any calls? I don't know, or your designate, so Mr. Fox?
Through the chair, yes, we've had a few incidences at the Fritzik and also the Civic Arena. Security will be starting soon whenever there is programming.
And I just want to follow by, and it's not a question. I know we're all in this boat, and I know I get pretty heated on it, and I'm sure the city manager's heard me this way before behind doors, pretty heated on this particular topic. And I want you all to know from our administration level, I know it's complex. I know it's difficult, but sharing the frustration that these citizens have, we do share that, and I want to make sure you all know that. But I'm not, knowing that you're not doing your job, that's definitely not it. It's just a frustration that I'm sure you hear on a regular basis. I know, Staff Sergeant, you hear this all the time, I'm sure, as well as our staff. So I want to thank you for the work that you all do, and we just hope that we can come to some resolution sooner than later. I do have one last question. Communications, I did hear a question about when we had the engagement sessions here that there wasn't communication done, or we didn't get the communication. Can someone speak to that? Because I do believe that was extensive, we were told, communication to advertising the different events that we had I don't know, Mr. City Manager, if there's someone that can speak to that?
Carly's not here. Mike, can you speak to that?
I did not see the notices that went out, but I was assured that communication was going out, but I can't confirm.
Okay, it's just something, if we can get back just that information later, because it was just a question that I heard, and I hope I jotted down majority of the questions that I'd heard from community members that were here, and we will do our best. So with that, thank you.
If I can, and the staff were just messaging me, they said that we did have a Get Involved page, and it was disseminated and communicated through social media and TV channels as well. So I'm just
For the announcement to come for those
I'm
different
just
meetings.
getting that information right now.
So I
while
guess
we're
looking
talking.
at the different forms of communication, we can maybe look into that. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have other members of council who would like to ask any questions? Councillor Palladino.
Madam Chair, a quick question through the city manager and probably the city treasurer. How much of the $230,000 has been is left? I mean, what's the burn rate? What have we got left? And we know what it's got us so far.
Through your the chair to Councillor Palladino. So currently, right now, it looks like there will be a remaining amount of about $60,000 of the $230,000 time we get to close to year end.
16?
60,000, I should say.
Thank you.
That's the remaining amount of the 230.
Do we have any other questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Parker?
Thank you. And I just want to thank the Madam Chairman for allowing me to ask the speakers if they had any questions and all that. Being the chairperson is a very difficult position, and if I did in any way undermine what you were doing, I completely apologize, because I know quite often the process is you make your presentation, but there isn't like follow-up unless a member of the board or something like that asks you a question in reference to an answer and all that. So that's why I wanted to use that moment, just so they feel like they were engaged. But if I was out of order there, please. But thank you, Madam Chair, for doing a good job in chairing this meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Parker. Do we have any other questions at all? I have some questions for our city solicitor. I'd hate for you to be lonely over there. What we do have here is a confluence of public interest, continuing nature, and a violation of what's going on in our parks, as well as a need for regulation. As part of the MGA, as council, it's our duty to provide good governance as well as develop and maintain safe and viable communities. What can we do to assist our police to legally enforce? And I'm thinking particularly bylaw-wise. The City of Calgary does have a section in their bylaw that states no use of public parks that unreasonably disturbs others. And we also have to keep in mind the anticipatory nature and the high probability of future harm that may be committed within these encampments. So what can we do legally that helps our city police as well as our bylaw officers with enforcement?
Thank you for the question. I'll first deal with sort of the different pieces one at a time. Speaking of Calgary's Parks Bylaw, our Parks Bylaw does have a similar section, Section 18, that says that no person shall obstruct the free use or enjoyment of any person using parks, or use or make, and this is a little bit dated language, but you'll get the gist, make blasphemous, vulgar, or inappropriate language or engage in any activity that would limit the peaceful enjoyment of persons using the park. So we have some bylaw provisions, specifically in terms of what would help the police. I can't give legal advice to the police or direct them how to go, but certainly I'm happy to meet with anybody from the police service and evaluate what they feel they would need and work towards that. Was there a third part that I've missed?
No, I think that covers that. We just need to, and I'm going to trust that you will set that meeting up with the police.
I meet with them regularly. Yeah.
And just make sure that we are giving them the tools that they need legally, insofar as that goes. Some questions for Mr. Fox. insofar as the report that was directed back. Has the CMHA outreach mobile team been fully staffed yet?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I'm going to defer that to Ms. Motz.
So at this time, the CMHA outreach team has not been fully staffed, and in conversation with the Canadian Mental Health Association, it has been determined that they will not continue with that service in their new contract in January of 2023. It will be put up for RFP. In the meantime, Streets Alive is providing outreach services under the $230,000 that was approved.
Did we fund CMHA for that project at all? And are we going to recoup those costs from them?
It was part of their contract, but they have not invoiced on services for that when it was not being completed.
Okay. So also part of the report back was 15 out of 29 intakes were completed. And what happened to the other 14?
I can't speak to each 14 situations. We understand that when an intake starts, there are several points of contact that need to occur to go through the informed consent process, and there was no follow-up from the individuals who started that process.
So we're not tracking what happens to people when they fall through the gaps?
When we can, we do. If an individual refuses to work with an outreach worker, then that's all we can record.
Is there anything we can do to have the outreach worker find out more about why we're losing people?
If the individual consents to providing that information, then we can. But if the individual is not willing to engage, we are limited.
Okay. And then I guess my final question, given the province's announcements this weekend that Blood Tribe Health will be taking over Alpha House, how are we helping Blood Tribe Health at this point with that transition?
Through the chair, we have reached out to Blood Tribe Health and asked if we can help at all. We haven't been formally notified from them that there is a contract between them and the province. I'm not sure if there is. But we will help any way we can with any service provider that we can help.
Great, thank you very much. And I do thank everyone who came forward to ask their questions and share their concerns. Certainly everybody around this table shares the same concerns and frustrations that you do, and I think you've heard that today. Do I have any other members of council that would like to ask any questions or make any statements? All right, I have a motion here from Councillor...
Manager just had...
Oh. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you'd mentioned about the information dissemination on the open houses. So staff have provided me the information through social media, Facebook, Instagram. 8,700 people viewed the posts. Lethbridge Herald ad, 13,000 digital and print subscribers, and approximately 15 public service announcements. So it was very widely communicated.
Thank you very much for that update. That's it? Any other questions or comments? All right, I do have a motion here from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the encampment strategy report and attachments for information, and further that the report be forwarded to the 2023-2026 operating budget deliberations. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've had a good opportunity to hear from the public, not only today, but at other forums as well. We hear loud and clear what their concerns are. We understand them. We're working, as we've heard from administration and the police service, to try and resolve many of these problems. We also acknowledge that this is an incredibly complex issue and it is going to take time. We appreciate your patience. We recognize your frustrations. Madam Chair, unless there is anything further in terms of debate, then I'll call the question.
Do we have any debate? Seeing none, question's been called. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us today. I will call this meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee adjourned.